and I am here to welcome everyone to the June 1st special meeting of the Northern Solano Democratic Club. I am Vice President Julia Roudson-Thomas, filling in as chair for Jeannie White. I would like to introduce the rest of the e-board. Secretaries Nancy and Steve Federley, Outreach Chair Jacob Francisco, and Treasurer Don Lowry. I will briefly display the agenda and members can then vote. So we can proceed. You have all received this agenda in your email, so just a quick share. Okay, and then we're going to start the poll just so that we can have our regular business completed. Please only vote in the poll if you are a member. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And I'm going to give everybody a couple more seconds to vote. And we're going to go ahead and end the poll now. And the agenda has been approved. We have established a quorum. We do have the requisite members to proceed with this meeting. So let's go ahead and in this meeting, we will be having presentation from the California Forever CEO, Jan Schremek, followed by questions and answers. All chat questions will go to the co-hosts and will be added to the question list as appropriate. We will combine questions and omit commentary to allow for as many questions as possible. Thank you for all being here for this important topic. Now let's all welcome Jan Schremek. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you. Go ahead. Oh, do you have something to share?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I would like to also introduce Jennifer Hernandez on the call with me, who is our lead land use attorney.
Okay, I have asked her.
Should we get started, Julia? Or
yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time on a Saturday evening. Before we kick off the presentation, by way of introduction, some of you know me. My name is Jan Schremek. I grew up in Europe in a very small town in a very blue-collar family. Through scholarships, I was able to come to the UK and eventually to America, and I really moved to California to pursue the California dream that people have been writing about and dreaming about for many decades. And I left California and I left Solano County and the broader region for all of the reasons that so many people for generations have done that. But what stood out to me about 10 years ago when I moved here was that it was ceasing to be this land of opportunity. And much has been written about that in the media for the last 10 years. And I think that the events of the last 10 years have shown that whatever was special about California as a place of opportunity has been slipping. And I was motivated to do something about it, and that's where this plan came from. And before I get into the presentation, I think I would like to frame this in a much longer narrative, much longer than my career. And I think Jennifer is the perfect person to do that. And so I would like her to introduce herself, talk about how her work in land use and housing and environmental protection over the last 30 or 40 years, and maybe frame this for us in the context of what she's seen in the space during her career.
Thanks very much, Jan, and I welcome the opportunity to chat with everyone virtually. I'm still a fan of in-person meetings, but we do what we do as technology evolves. I grew up in Pittsburgh, California. Both grandfathers and my dad spent their careers at U.S. Steel. My dad was permanently laid off in 1985, which is my first year of practice, and I'm now cresting into my 40th year as a lawyer. I was the University of California's first land use and environmental lawyer and operated in all UC campus locations, which was a real treat. And I still work all over California. Most of our projects these days are housing, and most of those are infill locations, and most of those are rental housing, and most of those have a market price of about $4,000 or more per month for a one bedroom. My family couldn't have afforded that at any point as we grew up. Could they have afforded that? Instead, we, like so many of my generation, were fortunate enough to have parents and grandparents who were able to buy a home, a modest home. Our first home was 900 square feet, and there were 3 kids and 2 bedrooms. And then we moved into this massive 3-bedroom home that was 1,100 square feet. It was fabulous. We view home ownership in my family, and I think in many of our families, as an inherent part of the California dream. I have to tell you, given the circumstances that befell my family starting in 1985, we were very fortunate. U.S. Steel didn't just lay off my dad, it ultimately went bankrupt. I had 2 grandmothers who had been widows for more than 20 years each, who relied on their pensions as widows, and those pensions were cut to almost nothing, as was my dad's, although he worked there from high school on. U.S. Steel finally shuttered just this past year and went through, as many of you may know, some bumps in between. But that trajectory from the 80s, where we still, as working families without a fancy college degree, could own our home, to now, saw a steady erosion in upward mobility and home ownership for Californians who work hard but simply can't afford to live where they, or even near where they work. I can tell you that infill is wonderful for those who can afford it. It is very disruptive, often in existing communities, to change the makeup of towns. Nevertheless, it's a huge part of the housing solution, as are accessory dwelling units. But our housing production has remained effectively flat since 2017, which is when the legislature went off on a binge of new laws to create new housing. And in fact, that just hasn't occurred. I remember in the 70s when Dow Chemical decided to cross the river and locate in Solano County. That was the first time Solano County made itself known to me. I went to St. Peter Martyr School, which was on the unfenced boundary of the PG&E. I stared across the river at Rio Vista and other communities. And then when I was a Sea Scout on one of the country's first co-ed Sea Scout troops, I had the privilege of tooling around the Delta, including in your neighborhood. It's a very special place. And I guess the thing is, a lot of California is a very special place. I would argue that all of it is. But I think it is fair that future generations, including those born today or born 25 years ago, like my son, have an opportunity to work hard and own a home and live somewhere near where they work, so that we're not just creating jobs in these distant job centers or service jobs in more distant centers. I've done a lot of these projects over the course of my 40-year career. Some of you may remember the Pacific Refinery out in Hercules, which periodically blew up. I was the lawyer that worked through the cleanup issues on that project, and it now has many, mostly single-family homes. But we know how to build. We may have forgotten that we know how to build. In the first decade of my career as an environmental lawyer, the focus really was on cleaning up pollution. Things got a little rougher. And then by the time really we hit the last 10, 15 years, it's more like build nothing anywhere near anything. And that unfortunately just doesn't work for a state that's almost doubled in population from 1970 to now. So I'm excited to work on this project. I'm excited that it's not another kind of golf course community for wealthy people. I'm very excited about the range of affordability, about the commitment to jobs, about the other voter commitments. In fact, I'm really proud to be associated with this project and hope it can be a capstone of a long career. I look forward to meeting many of you. I know we're not on the same page. I hope we can get there. And if not, my commitment is to play straight. And it's what I've always done. So thanks again for letting me jump in here, Jan, with a local perspective.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Jennifer will be staying on through the presentation, and she'll be available to help answer questions when we get to them. So thank you, Jennifer. With that, let's jump into a presentation. And before we jump into the presentation, I would like to frame this by letting a few Solano residents speak themselves about why they believe in this plan. And so there are now hundreds of Solano residents from all walks of life, all ages, all communities, all backgrounds, all professions, who have come out and said, I believe in this plan, I believe in what it is going to do for my family. And I would like you to hear from a few of them.
California Forever project for a couple of reasons, so let's get into it. Just in case you've been living under a rock, California Forever is a proposed new city in eastern Solano County, which is where I've lived my whole life. I love Solano County. I have been here my entire life except for when I went to college. And I actually have a couple different angles that I'm looking at this project as, because I am a longtime resident of Solano County. I also am a mom of 2 little girls. I am in real estate, and I actually got to serve on the advisory board for this project. So let's talk about the reasons why I love it. The first one is we need affordable housing. Being in real estate, I actually know firsthand that there are way more household formations than there actually are houses available for people to own. And I have 2 little girls, as I mentioned, and I really want to be sure that they have somewhere to live. And selfishly, I want them to live really, really close to their mom. That being said, I am excited for this project because it means that there's going to be housing for my little girls still in Solano County. Grandma can come over and help with the kids whenever they need me. I am super excited.
I'll do a couple more. Jesus Gonzalez is actually a property owner who lives on the Jepson Prairie. And Jesus runs a farm on 40 acres that is immediately adjacent to many of our holdings on Creed Road.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Jesús González. Quería compartir sobre la iniciativa y oportunidad económica que miro en este proyecto. Creo que es buena oportunidad para que nuestros hijos vayan a una escuela segura. Creo que es buena oportunidad para que nuestros hijos compren una casa. Entonces, creo que es muy buena iniciativa para mejores empleos, buenos empleos. Y como hombre de negocios, también creo que va a haber oportunidad de negocios nuevos, que me encantaría ser parte de ellos. Muchas gracias.
And lastly, I would like to let Leighton speak.
Hey, my name is Leighton Pablo, and I'm from the island of Guam. I found my home here in Vallejo, California, and it's awesome to hear that this idea of crafting a new community nested here between Fairfield and Rio Vista is breathtaking fresh urban life into Solano County. See, I'm all about the urban vibe. This project, it's like the city planner's dream come true. Picture this, okay? Middle-class housing popping up, cocooned with luscious greenbelt. It's not just about buildings, it's about sculpting a whole lifestyle right here in the heart of our county.
And lastly, I will let Annie Vogelpohl.
My name is Annie Vogelpohl. I've been a real estate broker in Solano County for 45 years. So anytime somebody says house to me, my ears light up, my eyes light up. Where can we find more houses? You know how desperately we need it. It's such an exciting project. Can you imagine waking up in the morning and saying, I think we'll build a city today? Well, of course we'll do that. Can you imagine the work it takes to get to today? So I admire so much all the folks that are involved in putting this project together. It's just overwhelming. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a great-grandmother. I don't know if I'll be around to buy one of those houses, but I sure hope my kids are and their kids. And maybe that place with the ADU is where I'll end up.
Couldn't have put it better myself. So with that, let's get into the substance of this. I'll go through the Q&A. I'll go through the presentation. There will be lots of space for Q&A at the end. There are, at this point, almost 100 people working on this project, and they are the best of the best of the best in each of the respective fields. They are designers and architects and planners and environmental scientists who have worked on the best projects in all of Northern California. It was so important to us when we started working on this that we had the best team in the world, but we also had a team of people who were all based in Northern California and who really knew the region and personally were invested in it. These people have worked on projects at all levels of density and all levels of scale, including local projects in Solano County, such as the Lagoon Valley project in Vacaville and the One Lake project in Fairfield. They've also worked on more medium density projects like Bay Meadows in San Mateo or North Bay Shore in Mountain View, all the way through to urban projects at a higher density in San Francisco. We also, at this point, employ about 40 people who are from Solano County and who live in Solano County, including many people who are third or fourth generation residents. And then many of us who didn't grow up around here have moved to Solano County and made it our home. And what you heard I think, from the people that spoke in the beginning is that it is primarily about affordable homes and good paying jobs, clean energy, and then increasingly what we're hearing is about more things to do here in Solano County for future generations. And given the scale of this project, we really believe that this is a once in a generation, maybe more than that, opportunity to think big about how do we make housing much more affordable and diverse? How do we bring jobs to an area that historically hasn't had many? How do we think about building the most sustainable community in the world? And Jennifer has worked on dozens, if not hundreds of these projects in California during her career. And so at the end, she can definitely speak about how this compares. Home ownership is so important to everyone, and you all know from your friends and colleagues and neighbors, and maybe from your own life, that increasingly that has been a slipping prospect for so many generations of residents in Solano County. The number of people that we've met who've said, my kids have moved, they've left because they couldn't buy a home here and because they couldn't get a job that would pay for that home, is staggering, and it is getting worse every year. It is also an equity issue. The rates of home ownership in Solano County are much smaller for communities of color. I believe the home ownership rate for the white community is about 50%. It is in the teens for Filipinos, for Black, and for Mexican families. Unfortunately, the situation has been getting worse, not better. And so, for example, if you look at household income in Solano County, which is perhaps the best measure of prosperity and economic opportunity and the degree to which the next generation is better off than the prior one. In 2002, the average household in Solano County made about $7,000 less than the rest of the region. And so it was about 90%. The gap was about 10%. They made about 90% of the rest of the region. Over the last 20 years, that gap has grown to $40,000 a year. And so today, the average household in Solano County makes 30% less than the rest of the region. Many other metrics track the similar progression. And that is at the core of why so many residents are in favor of this project and why so many businesses are now jumping on board. There's now over 50 locally owned Solano County businesses that have endorsed the project, and they range from beauty salons to hotels to restaurants to construction companies to flower companies to insurance companies. It is a group that is as diverse as Solano County. And it is a group that goes across the entire county, from Vallejo all the way to Dixon. To help address these issues, one of the main things that we are doing is we're bringing a number of employers to Solano County. We've just announced the initial 12. That is a fraction of the number that we are already in discussions with. We expect that we'll be announcing additional groups before the election in November. Importantly, we've really tried to focus on bringing employers that build on and respect the traditions of Solano County. And so two good examples of that would be advanced manufacturing and agriculture. In advanced manufacturing, we bring in companies like Hadrian that builds precision parts using advanced manufacturing for jets and rockets, including for the defense industry, and Zipline, which builds drones that started off delivering vital transfusions and medicines between remote African villages and will be increasingly used in America for deliveries. We are also bringing companies like Living Carbon, which invented a way to build trees that grow faster and sequester more carbon, and that is looking to build a nursery for 10 million trees. And they are looking to build a nursery in East Solano County as part of this program. Or another company is Plenty, which builds vertical farms that can grow food with far less land impact and far less water impact than conventional agriculture. And we'll talk more about Plenty later on. We are also beginning to pilot programs that are helping to prepare Solano residents for new careers if they are interested in them. And so this week, we announced a partnership with Merit America. The details are on our website. I would encourage you to take a look at it. This is Kaleem. Kaleem is a resident of Suisun City who worked with Merit America on a 3-month training program, as a result of which he doubled his income in 3 months, and he was able to purchase his first home where he now lives with his twin kids who were recently born. We are sponsoring a class of 20 people to help them cover the majority of the tuition for this program that they can take over the next 3 months. And this is really an early pilot program for a scholarships initiative that we have in the initiative that I'm going to talk about later. Before I get into the details of the proposal for the new community, I would like to talk about the process. Before we even get to November, we started the process by holding extensive community engagement in the fall. And we've mailed a survey to every resident. We've spoken to thousands of residents one-on-one in small groups. We've held town halls. We've sent out online surveys. We've done focus groups and polling. And the result of that was the ballot initiative that we introduced in January. And in particular, the feedback from, as well as our community advisory board, which included the Sheriff Tom Ferrara, representatives from labor, representatives from all of the cities. The ballot initiative that we introduced in January was really shaped based on that feedback in regards to where the community was cited and in particular, the community guarantees that I'm going to talk about later. From here, we recently submitted signatures to place the initiative on the ballot. We required 13,000 signatures. We have collected over 20,000 signatures in a real vote of confidence by people from across the county, from all walks of life into the plan. That's more than 60% more than what we required. And we expect that the county will certify the initiative shortly. Following the vote in November, the ballot initiative requires additional community engagement to determine details of these voter guarantees that I mentioned, which we'll talk about in a little bit. In parallel with that, we have to complete a full environmental impact report and work together with Solano County on both the development agreement and the environmental impact report. The results of the community engagement on the voter guarantees are then incorporated into the development agreement, which has to be certified by the supervisors. Following that and additional regulatory agency permitting, we would be able to begin construction. Importantly, the ballot initiative includes extensive requirements for ongoing community input during the full build out of the new community over many decades. And so in particular, what it says is that as we design each neighborhood every year, we have to present the plans for what is coming in the next couple of years and provide lots of ways for community input for everyone in Solano County on the design of these new neighborhoods. And so it is a process that has lots of checks and balances in it throughout the entire process, and a lot of spaces for community input, both at the level of 25, 26 on the design of these guarantees, and thereafter on the physical build out of the new community. So let's get into the proposal. The proposal is to try to address all of those issues that I mentioned in the beginning by building a new economic engine for all of Solano County. And so here we are looking at the proposed location of the new community, looking south. We have Fairfield here on the right and the Air Force Base. And as you can see, the new community is located north of Highway 12. The residential portion, or the mixed-use portion of it, is located on about 13,500 acres, which is a small fraction of the overall holdings that we have in the area. The remainder of the holdings is remaining in agriculture as a green belt, and we would be looking to add a solar farm. One of the things that we did as part of the ballot initiative is that we are enlarging the Travis security zone to make the base more resilient. Here you can see the area in yellow around Travis, which is the current Travis security zone. It's about 8,000 acres. As part of the initiative, we are voluntarily adding to that Travis security zone all of the property that's shown in yellow hashing, which I'm pointing out here. Adding all of those properties in this area almost doubles the size of the Travis security zone from 8,000 to almost 15,000 acres. When you add to it the properties that are already under conservation easements, or they are under public ownership, which are these purplish properties, Travis ends up with a security zone of almost 20,000 acres. That's over 30 square miles. And so the ballot initiative will actually give Travis a lot more certainty on in that security zone, no development is permitted. The only permitted uses are agriculture, habitat conservation, and building of a solar farm, provided that the solar farm is approved by Travis Air Force Base. The protections are also perpetual. So unlike some of the current protections in that area, which expire in 2028, the protections in the Travis security zone go in perpetuity, and they cannot be removed without a vote of the people of Solano County. This is a plan view of the same thing. Community is in blue, and then we have the existing Travis security zone. The hashed one are the additions. Purple is the existing public lands and conservation easements. And then here in green, we have a Rio Vista parkland. And really, we started this process by wanting to be a great neighbor to both Travis Air Force Base and to Rio Vista. And so with regards to Travis, we did that by looking at the flight paths and the documents that the base published, as well as additional feedback that the base gave us after we introduced the initiative in January. On the basis of that, we then moved the community even further out and introduced this this light blue area, which is the Travis compatible infrastructure zone. And so this is technically part of the new community, but the only uses permitted there are low occupancy uses that would be compatible with Travis's mission. And so that might include battery storage, solar farms, sewer plants, water treatment plants, and similar uses. In Rio Vista, we asked the residents, as well as many of the community leaders, how they felt about the location of the new community and where we should put it. And what we heard over and over and over again was, don't put it all the way next to the city limits, but don't put it all the way by Fairfield either. We have so many things that we've been trying to get to Rio Vista for a long time, such as a second grocery store, more shops and restaurants, a healthcare clinic, and we won't be able to do that on our own. And so your community, the new community, is the best chance of addressing that. And so it would be nice if we had it close by. And so we did that by designing this Rio Vista Parkland, which internally we call the Friendship Park, which will be a place of trails and sports grounds and open space that residents of both communities can spend time in. The community plan inside the footprint of the new community is really a plan for building of a compact, medium density, walkable, complete community. And so what that means is not building a subdivision, but building a community that has all of the things there that people need. And that means housing of different types of price points. It means jobs, it means shops and restaurants, places of worship, schools, everything that is needed. We do have a few zoning districts within the new community. We have a downtown primary one here in the middle, and then a secondary one closer to Rio Vista. We have a industry and technology zone, which is place for major employment, like manufacturing, vertical farms, data centers. We then have two areas in purple that we are calling maker and manufacturing. And these are really modeled on old warehouse districts of many existing cities that were often located just outside of the downtown. And often over time, they've become places of culture and arts and making and manufacturing and small businesses and art galleries and bars and restaurants. We're trying to replicate that here. It's a place like R Street in Sacramento or Dog Patch or Potrero Hill in a place like San Francisco. We then have the orange area, the largest area is neighborhood mixed use, which would be a place with mostly housing, but also things like small offices, shops and restaurants, schools, services, and parks. The community, these are zoning districts, but it's better to think about them as flavors. And so the entire community is mixed use. And for example, you can build a retail shop in any of these zones. You can build a small office in any of these zones. For housing, you can't build it in the industry and technology zone, but it can be built in different parts of it. What it would do is if we're building higher density apartment buildings, they would probably go in the downtown. If we're building single family homes, small row houses, or small apartment buildings, they would be more naturally suited to the orange area. We then have the largest commitment to open space and parks of any city in the region. And so the ballot initiative requires that 4,000 acres out of the 17,500 acres has to be dedicated to parks and open space. And so it's almost 20% of the total mass of the new community. Here you can see there's some open space that's already been designated, including the green belt around the northern edge and a park throughout the middle around this linear creek, seasonal creek. And then the remaining acreage would be allocated as these neighborhoods are designed. And so the map here doesn't show all of the open space. The open space is has a minimum that is required by the ballot initiative, and then we will be allocating it throughout the design process. The design of the new community is really built around number one, affordability, and number two, walkability. And they go really well together. And what we're really doing is we're going back to very traditional American urbanism and a street grid that is very similar to what you might see in downtown Rio Vista, in Benicia, in downtown Fairfield, in downtown Vallejo, for example, even downtown Vacaville. And so we have a grid of streets with small blocks that mostly house single-family homes, row houses, and small apartment buildings. We have alleys going throughout the middle of the block, and each neighborhood is oriented around a central shopping street. And we locate schools not at the edge of the community, as has become too often the case. We locate the schools in the middle of the community. We really want them to be the heart of each of the neighborhoods. And we want to make it easy for young parents who are busy, often have multiple jobs, to do all of the things they need to do. And so they should be able to come in and pick up their kids from the school, pick up groceries on the way home and get home. We have a network of slow streets, which are streets where you can only drive 10 miles an hour and the car is a guest. And the goal is that an 8-year-old should be able to walk to school alone. Thinking of kids as a primary customer and a design goal is a great idea, because it turns out that places where kids thrive, everyone thrives. And so places that are really well designed for kids tend to be fantastic places for adults, and they tend to be fantastic places for older adults who have mobility challenges. We have a network of public transit running in these blue lines every half a mile. And we have a design requirement in the ballot initiative that every home has to be within a 10-minute walk of a school, a shopping street, and a park. In terms of renderings, these are more for the dimensions of the streets and the types of buildings that you might see. The architectural styles would vary widely over time. The dominant housing type that we expect would be row houses. Row houses have been the backbone of workforce housing and first home buyer housing in American cities for a long time. They can be built efficiently at reasonable construction costs, and therefore they can be delivered without subsidies and without deed restrictions to first-time home buyers. They can either work as a single-family home, or they can work by being divided into walk-up apartments, as was often common in many of the built-up neighborhoods in America. By innovating on the design of these neighborhoods and streets, we now believe that we'll be able to deliver new units, starter home units, somewhere in the $400,000 range for units in the 1,200 square feet range, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units, with smaller bedrooms, potentially even 3-bedroom units. That would be.
Thank you. I'm sorry. We do have a timing on the presentation versus the question and answer. So if you'd like to make a final closing statement, and then we'll move on to questions and answers.
Okay, I will wrap it up. I'll run through these quickly. We will do, we have you can see a backyard, local shopping street, parks, bringing jobs. We have an urban growth boundary that would respect the agricultural heritage and make sure that we protect the open space at the edge of the community. Building the largest solar farm in California that would also permit sheep grazing underneath the panels. I do want to talk briefly about the voter guarantees. We have a guarantee to bring 15,000 jobs that pay at least 125% of the Solano County average weekly wage. We have a $400 million housing program, a $70 million scholarship program, and we have a $200 million commitment to invest in existing cities in Solano County in the downtowns to make them better. With that, I think it's worthwhile to look a little bit into why are people against the plan.
Okay, well, I think we have some of that, Kellen, in our questions. So I do appreciate that you have gone through and had such a thorough presentation, and I do appreciate it. We do have some questions, especially regarding the guarantees. So let's get started. So California as a whole, and the Bay Area specifically, has not produced enough housing. But the question is, why pick Solano for this large city? There is no large-scale public transportation. We have a lot of fire risk, and we have a lot of flooding risk in that area. Why there?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a climate resilience perspective, it actually turns out that this is the best site to build essentially within 100 miles. So there is essentially no fire risk in that area. We can see that when we pull up the maps that are designated by California State. California State designates high-risk fire areas. In Solano County, they are in Fairfield and Vacaville on the west side. The entire area of eastern Solano County is designated as a low fire risk area because there's no forests. And so if there's fires, they are grass fires and they can be easily managed, particularly with new building codes. And so this would be probably the safest community from a fire risk perspective in all of Solano County. From a flooding perspective, this is the most resilient site from a climate change perspective and from a sea level rise and flooding perspective in all of Solano County. And let me see if I can, I will pull up a map that I would like to show everyone. If you just give me a few minutes. So the entire community.
To be clear, while you're pulling that up, while the flood risk is low, while it is agricultural land, you're talking about a probably 0.3 when you're talking about water runoff. You're talking about 0.3 actually runs off. Most of it actually just reabsorbs because it's farmland. When you move to concrete, when you move to impenetrable, you're at more of a 0.7, 0.8. So that runoff changes. So, and would change. And I mean, obviously the EIR would get into that, but just because the flood map now shows that doesn't mean the flood map with those changes would.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start answering that, and then I'll ask Jennifer to comment on the rest of it. So from a flat and sea level rise, this map is the 2150 projected sea level rise in California. This is the medium to high severity scenario, I believe, which is about 8 feet of sea level rise, and that is overlaid on top of a flat scenario. And as you can see here, the new community is entirely outside of that flat risk plane, except for these small corners, which are open space and where we're going to be raising them. As you can see in this flat risk scenario, essentially the entire downtown Rio Vista and substantial parts of Suisun City are flooded. And so this community is much more resilient from those perspectives than almost anywhere else in Solano County. From a runoff perspective, there are extensive regulations for how runoff needs to be managed, and we cannot make runoff any worse. Jennifer, why don't you talk a little bit more about that? Jennifer, I think you muted.
It's my fault. I do apologize.
Yep. No worries. Thanks very much. Yep, there are a variety of regs that we now know well how to comply with, from permeable pavements to on-site open space areas that have enhanced groundwater recharge capacity. And so the goal here, of course, in the design, as will be proven up in the EIR, is not to change the flood hydrology outside the site based on stormwater flows or, for that matter, sea level rise. It's a very interesting site. I had no idea we had a site like this in the core Bay Area that has the right elevation, has manageable topography, and frankly is already protected from sea level rise. But the stormwater question is a great one, and there's a variety of design features, both at the micro level and at the macro level, that are part of what's called a one water system, which is to make full use of water, including creation of recycled water, groundwater recharge, and irrigation water for outdoor uses, including agriculture.
Exactly. Just to add to that, we think of the runoff very much as an opportunity. And because we are designing the community from scratch, it's an opportunity to design it in a way where we can capture essentially all of the runoff and then use it for irrigation on the neighboring agricultural properties, store it in some of the underground water features, or potentially even use it for the aquifer recharge.
Okay, going to the next question. Is your intent to change the zoning and then just sell the property as is, as it would be more valuable with the zoning changes?
Absolutely not. We are here for the next 4 years.
Okay. According to Cal Matters, analysis of the initiative, approval of the ballot measure would allow California Forever to have a, quote, by right or ministerial approval, which would require the county to approve preliminary applications for development within 60 days. And assuming the project is consistent with zoning and set up in a broad design rules, the county would have no choice but to approve them, no discretion, no public hearings. This decision would also exempt the environmental review and any related lawsuits. Why should we give you that kind of unrestrained power?
I will give a very quick answer, and then Jennifer will give follow-up. So it is not unrestrained power. The design principle of the entire new community is that we should be, in order to make home ownership affordable, we need to get out of the business of approving every single home through an extensive process where, and Jennifer, I love working with you, we pay way too much money to lawyers and consultants and therefore make homeownership unaffordable for families. And so our goal has been to design a change in the general plan and the zoning that provides design standards, and then combine that with the set of 10 voter guarantees. And then we give the county extensive opportunity to add additional procedural requirements in the development agreement. The development agreement is going to be several thousand pages long with all of the exhibits. And so the county has an opportunity to put in all kinds of safeguards into the development agreement But once the entire process is approved and we have additional checks in place for community input and so on, the goal is to be able to build homes quickly and build them at a price point that people can afford again. And to do that, we need to be able to not spend money on lawyers and consultants every time that we're building a home. And I think the other part of it that I say is this is part of how we are able to introduce these incredible voter guarantees and, for example, provide $400 million in down payment assistance and for affordable housing, which is the greatest commitment to affordable housing in the state of California. The California state has a program for down payment assistance. The state program is $300 million for the entire state. We have a program that's $400 million just for Solano County. It's bigger. Solano County is 1% of the population. And we've been able to design a housing affordability program that's bigger than the entire states. This is from a private developer. All of this money is coming from us. And we've been able to do that by really thinking about where do we take inefficiency from the system and not pay banks and consultants and lawyers, and instead pay construction workers and then deliver affordable homes. And with that, Jennifer.
Yes, so let me just step back, and I won't go too deep into the nerd zone, but enactment of this initiative approval really just gives us permission to apply to the county for approval of a development agreement. Development agreement is a binding contract that locks in place not just the voter guarantees, which are also locked in place by the initiative itself, but it also has all kinds of other details about the conditions under which the project will be allowed to build out. That development agreement cannot be approved without a full environmental impact report, a full one, not a programmatic general, we'll see how it goes one. So that is a very robust requirement. It will be an EIR for the largest project of this type done in the history of California. Challenging, but the right thing. Before making any commitment to anything of this scale, we think the community deserves a full environmental impact report, and that's what we've committed to do in the initiative. The next thing, though, that happens is development agreement doesn't give us permission to build anything. You need to subdivide the land, which in this case will go in chunks, in phases. And each phase needs its own what's called tentative tract map. Tentative tract maps lay out lots. They lay out the more specific details about streets and utilities and whatnot. By statute in California law, those are discretionary approvals by the county. They are not approvals of by right anything. But here's what's by right. Once we get the subdivision done, once we do the EIR, once we get the development agreement in place, these neighbor on neighbor disputes, house, I don't want it built because I like that open lot next door. I want to stay open. Neighbor on neighbor disputes are the largest target of CEQA lawsuits in all of California. And that's not just, I've done a lot of research on this and my research is available online, but I would commend to you the Little Hoover Commission, a nonpartisan board of experts convened by California, which just issued its own CEQA report, California Environmental Quality Act report, confirming that fighting using CEQA to stop or stall or downsize residential projects, that is the top target of CEQA lawsuits. From my perspective, it really isn't at that point about the environment. I don't believe people are pollution. Even undergrads who live in People's Park are not pollution. And I hope the Supreme Court agrees with us, legislature does. So no by right until we get through the development agreement with full EIR. And then after that, subdivision map approvals, which also trigger CEQA and are discretionary by the county. But then we should be able to build structures that comply with all of those other things, as well as California, literally hundreds of environmental, land use, public health, and other laws without creating the need for an EIR or opening the window of a CEQA lawsuit every time someone decides to build a row house.
Okay, and so during these development agreement approvals, public would have input.
Absolutely.
And CEQA gets triggered in when you start going to the subdivision divide.
No, actually, CEQA comes at the development agreement level,
Mhm.
and the community has full input then. CEQA is also triggered every time there's a discretionary approval, and that does happen at the tentative track map. We're going to try to do the first phase tentative track map with the development agreement, so the community has a better sense of the layout of the project at a greater level of detail.
Okay, and as to one of the, so I will go ahead and replace you on over here. As to one of the guarantees, that jobs guarantee, if construction workers for the new construction can be counted towards the 15,000 jobs, wouldn't this just be a majority temporary jobs for these guaranteed jobs?
So my recollection of what we said with regards to construction is that they would need to be jobs that have proven to be de facto permanent. And so good example of that is I believe there'll be construction workers who will apprentice, work, and retire on building this new community. And this will be 80 or 90% of the work they ever did. I hope they live in our community, and they are some of the first people who buy homes there. Because I think if people live in the community where they're building, they just build it differently and they care more. I would love that the schools are built by fathers whose kids and grandkids go to those schools. They will look different. And if they don't live there, I hope that they live in Rio Vista and Dixon and Fairfield and Vacaville, and they have a 20-minute commute and they see their kids for dinner instead of living in Fairfield and working in Palo Alto and never seeing their family. With that said, those jobs would only count if they are de facto permanent. We just put out an economic study that showed that just the construction of the solar farm alone would create 1,400 de facto full-time jobs. Those jobs would last for 10 years. That's more than most people's careers in any particular company. And so there's 1,400 jobs, 1,100 of them, I believe, in construction. And so I believe that construction jobs in the initiative are counted, provided that we've shown that those jobs are de facto permanent, which on a build out of a new community that would take 40, 50 years, they would be.
Okay. Tech employers have been laying people off recently. It's a volatile industry generally for employment. Advanced manufacturing often has minimal employees and is mostly robotic. Why would these employers benefit Solano County?
I believe that the technology industry, the share of American population that works in that industry has grown consistently every single year de facto for the last 30 or 40 years. It's a larger and larger part of our economy. They are the best paying jobs. They have the best benefits. They have the best healthcare. Any one company can, of course, have layoffs. That is also true for every other company in the economy. These companies are growing much faster than any other company. So whilst there might be some of them that have layoffs some of the time, the aggregate share of employment by the technology industry is increasing every year. I would note that in terms of layoffs, the traditional employers in Solano County, if you look at the last 3 or 4 big announcements in Solano County, they've been layoffs. They haven't been new employers. The last big announcement in Solano County was Abbott Labs, which is a traditional employer, firing 200 people in Fairfield and shutting it down. We are bringing 12 new employers. It's the biggest vote of confidence by any group of employers in Solano County in 40 years.
Okay. And we did have a follow-up to the fire questions. Will you all be working with homeowners to insurance companies to guarantee coverage? Because right now, to get fire insurance in California, which is as a whole a huge fire risk, like to get these property coverages. We
actually think that we might be actively involved in that because we believe that on this particular site, given the low fire risk there to start with, and then the design of the new community with full compliance to the latest building code, we will be able to provide better home insurance, better fire insurance for the homeowners than in almost any other community in California. Because if you build an entire community to the full latest building code, it is very, very difficult for anything to catch on fire. I mean, Jennifer, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just that the master plan community is built to standards that really took full effect in 2019 and are only getting more stringent. Turned out to be places of refuge in California where firefighters and other emergency response teams went to be safe while taking a break from the fire that actually stops at the fuel.
I lost Jennifer.
I believe Jennifer had a conversation about this, so I can hopefully finish this until her internet comes back. I believe she was saying that
through mutual aid agreements and increase net fire production and protection in the region. Also, the governor just announced that he's fixing the insurance crisis this legislative season. So hopefully that one will be behind us before we get through the EIR process.
We lost you a little bit in there, Jennifer, but I think we got most of it. If not, feel free to send me a chat and we'll go back in and ask a little bit further. As to the timing required in this initiative, it does not require additional schools, infrastructure improvements, et cetera, until population has reached a certain point. But these improvements, these schools, will be required prior to these being completed. So there's going to be an interim where the things that are needed are not built, but the triggers for when they're needed, for when they're built, haven't been hit. And so you're going to have a lag time in there. So what do you do in that interim?
Yeah, Jan, if you'd like, I can start.
you can start. I just wanted to put it on the screen.
Okay. So I mean, this is a normal thing for new communities. Typically, what we call the day one scenario does include a new school, not necessarily though for high school, which requires more services and programs than the K-8 school. Also, we need on-site fire and police protection, or sheriff's protection rather. But Jan, did you want to go to the initiative text?
Yeah. So I know that this is one of the misconceptions that's been out there about schools, but we are in fact going above and beyond what new communities in California have done. And so on page 6 of the initiative in the schools guarantee, it says very clearly that we have to build new schools in the new community, not just for elementary and middle, but all the way through grade 12 for students living in the new community. And so they will be built on day one when people moving in.
Yes, I'm saying that even if you start building on day one, they're not going to be ready for those students when they move in, because you're not building until they move in. So there is going to be a gap where students are going to need to go to school, because unless you're not selling to people who have kids, which is illegal, you need schools for these kids. And so they're either going to be going to Rio Vista or they're going to be going to Travis. And so like there is going to be this gap where people have moved in, they have children, and the schools have just started getting built, which is awesome, fantastic. Let's get some new schools in there. That's wonderful. But it takes years. And then you're going to have to hire people and blah, 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 all of that stuff. It just takes a long time.
So normally it does. What we are saying is that the schools are going to be ready when the first resident moves in.
Okay.
Well, it's called a day one scenario, and it's for core services, including schools.
Okay. And so that would be K-8, not 12, or it would be K-12?
K-12.
Okay.
K-12. And that is a remarkably ambitious commitment, yet it would be contractually assured through the development agreement, and because it's required by the initiative.
Okay. So would these schools then be in the Travis and Rio Vista school districts, or would they have its own district?
They would be in the existing school districts unless the existing school districts would like something else. But our goal is to be in the existing school districts.
Okay. Are you at liberty to share local elected officials that have supported this new city?
I believe that many of them will be coming out over the next few months.
Okay. And will you be collaborating with the unions in the county on these construction projects?
Yes, and in fact, many of them served on the Community Advisory Committee, including John Riley, the head of the Central Labor Council, Danny Bernardini, the head of the building unions, and Ron Roulette, the former mayor of Vacaville, who is the political director for the Northern California Carpenters. And we have been in discussions with all parts of the labor movement, including both the building trades, as well as public sector unions and private sector unions, about working together on this project for the next 50 years. We believe this is going to be the biggest opportunity for many of their members to reach home ownership for the first time, as well as to get good paying jobs in close proximity to home instead of traveling to somewhere that's an hour and a half away every day.
Okay, and I actually missed a question. So what does affordable housing mean to you? Like, how much does it cost? And what does that housing look like? Are they condos, townhomes, houses, apartments?
Yeah, I mean, affordable housing means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think to us, it means that we would like this to be the most affordable place in Solano County for first-time home buyers and young families in particular, as well as, for example, seniors looking to downsize to buy a home for the first time. And so to us, that comes in two forms. On the capital A affordable housing front, so deed restricted, whether it's for rent or for sale, we have a $400 million Solano Homes for All guarantee in the initiative. That is $400 million that we have to pay as a developer between the build out from 0 to 50,000 residents. And I want to be very clear, we have to pay that on a year-by-year basis pro rata. So this is not paid at the end. This is paid every year as we build the homes. How that money is used is to be decided by Solano County community and then by the supervisors. But it is to be used for two purposes. One is down payment assistance, and then the other one is capital A affordable housing in the form of subsidies, land grants, community land trusts, and so on. If you say that half of that money would be used for affordable housing, that would create thousands of deed restricted capital A affordable units in the new community. And again, what those are and how they are built is really decided by the community, not by us. So that's on the deed restricted. And again, there, it is a choice of the county and the community whether we want to have a lot of units that are lightly subsidized or many units that are deeply, deeply subsidized for people at the very bottom of the income distribution, or some combination of that. In terms of market rate housing, we would like to be, and we believe we will be, a community where you can buy the most affordable new construction unit in all of Solano County. We believe that we will have 1,200 to about 1,200 square feet units in for sale somewhere in the $400,000 range, which is about $200,000 less than new construction of the smallest type costs in Fairfield or Vacaville or Dixon. In addition to that, we are going to be helping with affordability for those units through two main programs. The first one is the portion of the Solano Homes for All guarantee that will be allocated to down payment assistance. And so if $200 million is allocated to down payment assistance, and let's say that, again, the community and the supervisors decide that that takes the form of a $50,000 grant per family, that's enough for 4,000 Solano County families or their children to get $50,000 each to down payment. And so that is just for the build out from 0 to 50,000 residents, which will be about 20,000 homes. So we're saying that for 4,000 out of a total of 20,000 homes, Solano families and their children will get $50,000 each to down payment. It's an unprecedented commitment. It's 20% of all of the units. And if you apply that to a home somewhere in the $400,000 range, that means that the families would only need to put together about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 towards down payment. That is a fraction of what it would be elsewhere in Solano County. If they also apply through an FHA or another program for first-time home buyers, the down payment assistance would be enough to cover their entire down payment, which is 3% of the purchase price, as well as all of their closing costs. So Solano County families and their children would be able to buy a home in the new community for less than anywhere else in the county, with no down payment, with all down payment provided by this program. Additionally, the last thing I'll say is affordability is also a function of income and other expenses. And we believe we'll be able to make a huge difference there through two ways. One is creation of these jobs that pay at least 125% of Solano County average weekly wage. Those jobs today would have to pay at least $88,000. If you have a family of two, you suddenly get into a region where they are making $176,000 a year, and the home is costing $450,000, and they have no down payment. That is the greatest affordability opportunity anywhere in California right now by an unprecedented margin. Lastly, we'll make it even more affordable by designing a community where people can walk and bike and use public transit to get to work. If we can reduce the car ownership rate from 2 cars per family to just 1 car, if, for example, one of the spouses works in Fairfield or Vacaville, or they would like to have a car to go outside of the new community to visit friends and family or shop, but they can have 1 car. The average family spends about $13,000 a year on lease, gas, and insurance. And so if we can take out of the budget $13,000 because suddenly they can walk to work or they can bike to work or take public transit, that is $1,000 a month that they can instead put towards their mortgage. I think when we go back in 20 or 30 years, there will be tens of thousands of families in Solano County who said, the East Solano plan is how our family got onto the home ownership ladder for the first time ever. And I can't wait for it to happen.
Okay. I mean, the down payment plan program, it does help people, but would help 4,000 out of 20,000, which, you know, that is a significant amount more than what is being happened right now, but it's not everybody. 400.
So excuse me, respectfully, at all of the developments in Solano County that many of our opponents have not opposed, east of Leisure Town Road in Vacaville, everything in Rio Vista, One Lake, the homes cost $600,000 or $700,000, and there is zero down payment assistance. And so respectfully, I don't think it's fair to say you only 20% of the people get $50,000 each to down payment. I think that's a bit of a double standard, respectfully.
Oh, sure. I'm just also gonna take issue with nobody was against those projects, but sure, we'll move on from that.
I never said that, to be clear. I never said that. I can be very respectful.
Okay. And then the other thing is the highways and water. I know you have guarantees in there, and they are tied to state requirements within water, and I think people's biggest point about the transportation guarantee is going to be that while this East Solano plan is supposed to pay a certain amount and does have to allocate land towards that expansion, that it is going to cost more than what is going to be given by this plan. So it is going to go to taxpayers because there's no way around it. It's gonna have to be expanded. And while you guys are paying your fair share, that's not everything.
Absolutely. And I think that we are paying more for highway expansion than basically any other developer has ever paid in Solano County. And this project, I mean, Highway 12 is called Blood Alley for a reason. And there are I think there are over 100 people who died there in the last 20 years alone. And right now, nobody's doing a goddamn thing about it. Right now, if you look at the Caltrans plan, Caltrans says there's going to be no improvement to the bridge or to the highway for the next 30 years. Zero. The problem right now on Highway 12 is that it's a problem, but it's not enough of a problem for enough of people, for anyone to care about bringing federal and state money into Solano County. And so what's going to happen here is that we're going to provide our part of the funding, whether it's 20 or 30%, whatever Caltrans determines. There is a piece of misinformation that some of the opponents have put out there that I think is really dishonest, which is that the burden of that would fall on taxpayers of Solano County. That could not be further away from the truth. We have a Solano taxpayers guarantee, which says in, I think, 6 different places in the initiative that under absolutely no circumstances can any taxpayer in Solano County ever pay anything towards anything that is helping this community effectively. The money, the remaining X% of the money, would come from state and from the federal government. Between California and the federal government, we are spending hundreds of billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars on highways every year. The problem is that Solano County is not getting any of the money because there's nobody at the table advocating for it. Yes, taxpayers are going to pay part of the money, but it's going to be Solano County getting its fair share of the money it should have been getting for the last 40 years. And we have the resources and we have the project that aligns with so many of the state and federal goals: housing affordability, keeping jobs in California, climate change, climate resiliency. We're going to go to the state and we're going to go to the federal government and we're going to bring the money to Solano County where it should have been for the last 40 years, but it hasn't.
Okay, well, we have run out of time, and I do really thank you for coming and speaking to everybody. This was a fascinating discussion, and I really did learn a lot, and I hope everybody on this call did too. I'm actually going to stop recording.
If I may